We dismiss history at our peril.
Liberty Nation Radio with Mark Angelides.
The Georgia case against President Donald Trump and associates is in full swing, and we've already had people copying plea deals. Now, to discuss those particular deals, the cases, and I promise no maritime law, Mr. Scott D. Cosenza, host of the excellent Uprising podcast and Liberty Nation's legal affairs editor, joins us today. Thanks for being here, Scott.
Admiralty or dry ground, Mark, I am at your service, and a pleasure to be here.
Fantastic. Pirates. Let's talk pirates. No, let's talk about the case in Georgia that's building against Donald Trump and others for it's essentially accusations about crimes that were committed around the 2020 election. Now, we've had several people already take deals out of, I think there are like 18 or 19 defendants, and at least 3 have already taken deals. But it seems to me, Scott, that the deals that have been taken, they're for slap on the wrist charges. Now, do feel free to go into as much detail or as little as you want on this, just to get to the salient points.
Well, thank you for the latitude there. Yeah. So just to kind of paint the picture here, the 3 bigger names I think are Jenna Ellis and Sidney Powell and Kenneth Cheesebro are the folks who've taken deals, the kind of more headliney names. And this is the Fannie Willis criminal prosecution for conspiracy, kind of loosely pulled together conspiracy by Donald Trump. And to your point, and the big story, Mark, is they did not plead guilty to the overriding criminal conspiracy that's motivating the entire prosecution. That is, I think, the headline takeaway. Whether you're a fan of Donald Trump or stand in opposition to him, that's the big news out of these cases. They couldn't get a conviction even from the people they're handing the candy out to, meaning they could have gotten them to take the conviction and still not suffered any consequences if they wanted to be very generous as prosecutors. But then they would have had them go to court and say they were part of this criminal conspiracy, which would have implicated Trump. None of these charges do.
So, yeah, this all comes down to, I guess, the RICO charges, right? Which, excuse me, which is funny, seeing as hardly any of them are Italian. But this idea of racketeering, sorry, that's a joke from an old movie. But if they're not pleading guilty to this coordinated racketeering, and they're just taking slaps on the wrist and having to write apology letters like fourth grade
Jenna
kids.
Ellis, so let's specify, just so for people who don't know, Jenna Ellis, she pled. Well, her case is actually a good one to drill down on, just kind of examine what's happened. She did not plead guilty to undergoing or being a part of a criminal conspiracy to deprive Georgia voters of any rights they may have or defraud the state or anything like that. What she did was she pled that she did not undertake due diligence when relying on facts asserted by other legal professionals, namely other lawyers that were hired by Donald Trump told her X, and she just took that X and ran with it as a fact and didn't independently investigate it. And that's what her tearful apology revealed. So that, like, literally, it's a nothing burger as far as, Donald Trump would be concerned about. And also, for the record, I actually don't think it's a violation of professional standards to rely on
other members of the bar, right?
Like, if you think about it in an entirely different context, if you go to your dentist and you say, "Oh, my molar needs to be removed because it's not a good molar anymore," it would be a good idea for the dentist to investigate that for themselves and see if whether your assessment of your molar is a good idea. But if another dentist says, "Oh, we have an extraction order on molar number or whatever the number is, please go ahead and perform it," and you're that person's junior in the operation, it's reasonable or more reasonable that you would do the work, having relied on a professional's advice. So
let me just delve into this freshly, because to me, this seems that this would be quite beneficial to Trump, because Trump's main argument, his main defense here is that A, he believed and believes that the election or elements of the election were fraudulent, and that B, he was relying on legal advice. Now, Jenna Ellis's plea that she was listening to advice from other lawyers bolsters Donald Trump's position.
Facts. Her position is that she was relying on facts provided by other lawyers.
Right.
Just for the record.
Sure.
And Trump's charges require, for him to be successfully prosecuted, it's required that the prosecution prove beyond any reasonable doubt that Donald Trump believed he was committing a fraud against other people. That's part of the key component of engaging in a criminal conspiracy to defraud the voters, is that he had to have thought that he was engaging in one. It's not like an accidental fraud. That's not part of the thing. This is a purposeful act, and he must have the guilty mind, right? The mens rea.
Yeah, the mens rea.
And so any prosecution that doesn't reveal or get us closer to having that, it doesn't advance the prosecution against Trump in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah, so it seems to me then that the Sidney Powell one, the Kenneth Chesebro one, or Cheesebro. I'm sorry, Mr. Kenneth. I'm not entirely sure how to pronounce
it. It's more fun to say Cheesebro. That's why I'm
sure it is. And Jenna Ellis, it seems to me that these are the early trials, which was clearly a strategy, right? It was like get in there early. It was their strategy to ask for a swift
Mark,
trial.
I'm going to stop you right there because this is an actually very important point in how we analyze and think about these things. The early plea bargains are the ones that are most generous.
This is my point.
The accused, most generous to the accused. So if this is the best they can do, if this is, I mean, it's like you're giving away the store, and you couldn't give away the top level conviction in order to advance your prosecution, Trump. So it's actually a pretty huge fail in that regard. Now, there's one component. I just don't know how much time we have. I wanted just to get this in. The one thing that Trump loses with an early plea, and this was a point I saw made by Ankush Kardori, who is a former federal prosecutor who's often does media appearances. I can't remember where I saw him write this, but I thought it was an interesting point. Is all the evidence would be the same against Trump that it is against these other defendants. So if they were going to have to go through trial, Trump would get a really good advanced look at all the evidence in detail and how it plays out. Now, there is something called discovery, and he will be afforded the discovery evidence, but the kind of raw files of discovery are much less valuable than the honed, kind of sharpened point of the stick of where they think they can poke you with a trial. And so that's the one thing that he loses on this. And it's never a great thing if one of your co-defendants pleads guilty, even if you had, even if you never met them and never had a conversation with them. It just, generally speaking, it's better for you if that doesn't happen. But within those contexts, Mark, I don't see it as a big loss for Donald Trump, and I don't think that it's going to aid substantially his criminal prosecution.
I would say that there's a big political win for Donald Trump here, that there's 2 misdemeanors, and I think it is a felony, isn't it, for Jenna Ellis?
In fact, she's subject to, we said we're going to drill down on the case, but then I think we went away from it. So let's drill down on it. She was convicted of a crime. She will serve not a single day in jail or prison. She will do 100 hours, I think, of community service and pay a $5,000 fine. And so even that, again, it's that's the big reveal here. That's what we've, stopped the country for, in a manner of speaking, and where she's devoted years. She being Fannie Willis, the Fulton
Georgia District Attorney.
Yeah, exactly.
So let's leave the last thoughts here on Fannie Willis. What is she thinking right now, in your opinion? Is she thinking that I've made a terrible mistake here, I've cast my reputation onto this case, and it's not landing? Or is she thinking I've got the best stuff saved up? Or can we just possibly not know?
Well, I think the smart money bet is just to think of who her audience is, who is she performing for and what her goal is. And any successful prosecution of a Trump ally or lieutenant, I think it accrues as a win to Fannie Willis. And eventually, I think she'll probably be unsuccessful. And I hope she's unsuccessful. And the reason why is not because I favor Donald Trump politically. It's because I think that prosecutors who create novel applications of the criminal law to punish their political enemies should not be successful. That's sort of my, my cross my heart hope for this country. So I think that she will be, but also I don't think that, who is going to really, be cross with her for doing it. I think that she's a hero in many circles for prosecuting Donald Trump, and she'll reap those benefits till her dying days because of Trump derangement syndrome.
And she will be able to put the copies of those apology letters written like fourth graders on her wall in her office. Scott D. Cosenza, thanks ever so much for enlightening us. Much appreciated. And that's about it for us on this week's edition of Liberty Nation Radio, heard coast to coast on the Radio America Network. I'd like to briefly thank our guests on today's show, longtime host of Liberty Nation Radio, Tim Donner, economics editor Andrew Moran, and legal affairs editor Scott D. Cosenza for taking the time to join me. And of course, extend my warmest thanks to you, the listeners, for taking the time to tune in. A final thought for this week, I'll leave you with the words of Albert Einstein, who said, quote, "I know not with what weapons World War III will be fought, but World War IV will be fought with sticks and stones," end quote. Just something to think on. Thank you for listening. We dismiss history at our peril.
Liberty Nation Radio with Mark Angelides.
Don't get caught up in the media madness. Join our movement for free thinking and free speech at libertynation.com. Publishing news and analysis 24/7 with original articles by our team of authors who tell it like it is. Join us each week for online TV shows, The Uprising Podcast, and Liberty Nation Radio. We believe in free thinking and free speech. We are libertynation.com.